The United States has a troubled legacy when it comes to protecting the lives of Black Americans. In 1868, the 14th Amendment was added to the U.S. Constitution to uphold the rights of African Americans. Sadly, this amendment has been overshadowed by an oppressive and violent history. To understand the significance of the 14th Amendment, we must go back, farther and deeper into history. Slave codes go back as early as the 1600s. By this time, Europeans were colonizing land up and down the Atlantic coast, and they were shipping thousands of kidnapped Africans to do the work. What do you think was on the mind of every slave master as he laid in bed each night? Fear. Fear that the people he was oppressing would one day fight back. So these Europeans created slave codes. These codes kept enslaved Africans from doing anything except living as a slave. 265 years later, slavery is abolished, and the southern states switch from slave codes to black codes. Since slavery was finally illegal, you would think the everyday lives of African Americans would improve, right? Wrong. The black codes continued to keep Black Americans from doing almost anything, just like the slave codes before. The primary purpose of the black codes was to keep Black citizens from making money and gaining wealth. For instance, in South Carolina, Black folks were forced to work as servants and farmers. If they wanted another job, they had to pay an expensive tax. As a result, many Black citizens were forced to continue working for former slave owners. A couple years later, the 14th Amendment was added to the American Constitution. The 14th Amendment has 5 parts. We are going to focus on the first section only. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now that the U.S. government amended its Constitution, do you think the lives of Black Americans would finally improve? Not really. Immediately after the 14th Amendment was made federal law, states created their own laws that went against the purpose of the 14th Amendment. These laws were commonly known as Jim Crow. Jim Crow laws were similar to the slave codes and black codes in many ways. Jim Crow laws prohibited Blacks from voting. They kept Black people from buying property, going to schools of their choice, and getting decent jobs. Jim Crow laws also protected white Americans who hanged, burned, and beat Black Americans for no reason except for being Black. In fact, there are photos of white American families having picnics while they watch the hangings of Black men. These photos were sold as postcards so that white Americans could keep them as souvenirs. You might ask, how did this happen? How could the individual states make up their own laws? They just did, and the federal government never stopped them. In fact, most of the Jim Crow laws created in the South were enforced all over the United States. Jim Crow laws went on for over 100 years. Finally, in the mid-1960s, several federal laws were signed to end the Jim Crow era. These laws included the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Equal Housing Act. These laws did some important things. It stopped legal segregation, it gave Black people full voting privileges, and it gave them a more equal opportunity to buy property. Now we're in the 21st century, 150 years after U.S. sanctioned slavery ended. How are things now for Black Americans? That's a really good question. Let's look at some facts for Black Americans today. The average white family is 10 times more wealthy than the average black family. 34% of the U.S. prison population, which is the largest prison population in the world, is black. Yet, black Americans are only 13% of the U.S. population. 22% of people who are shot and killed by the police each year are black. Yet, black people make up only 13% of the U.S. population. Remember, the 14th Amendment says, no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. Do you think the United States has trouble protecting the lives of its black citizens? Thanks for watching Deeper Than Red. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media.